Call this meeting to order. John, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you. Judy, would you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Saleh. Here. Mayor Lechleiter.
Here.
Mr. Reiner.
Here.
Mr. Keenan.
Here.
Ms. Chinesi Circuit.
Here.
Mrs. Sporing. Here. Mr. Gerber.
Here. Thank you. And thank you all for your patience. We had a lengthy Finance Committee meeting this evening as well as a executive session, so we appreciate your patience and understanding. We are beginning this evening's council meeting with a community attitude survey. Well, the survey is complete. We're going to get the results or a summary of the survey. Sandra, are you going to lead this off?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. This evening we have with us Marty Saperstein of Saperstein Associates. Earlier this year, he conducted a survey, a community attitude survey. The last time we did one of those was 3 years ago. Also, at the end of 2012, the City of Dublin conducted the National Citizen Survey. This evening, though, specifically, Marty will be addressing the results of the community attitude survey, and in some cases giving some data that is related in the National Citizen Survey. We don't have a presentation prepared for you on the National Citizen Survey this evening. If you would like one at a future time, let us know. Otherwise, this evening, we are placing, as soon as Marty is done, all the information online so you and the rest of our residents will be able to see the summary reports and complete data for both surveys. So I'll turn it over to Marty.
So the hard part's done. Last time I met with you all, we were chatting about what questions might be included in a questionnaire that measures community attitudes, and tonight I'd like to share with you the results of this piece of research and a little bit about what I believe these surveys do. I think that this research gives your residents, the residents of Dublin, a voice, and it allows the community to express opinions on all sorts of issues, and in doing so, provides you all, city officials, important data as planning for the future continues. A little bit about the method. This survey, unlike the survey done by NCS, this is a telephone survey conducted with a random sample of 400 registered voters living in the city, conducted both landlines and cell phones. Interviews were completed in February and averaged 23 minutes in length. And I mention the length because it always seems to me that the length of my presentation should not be much shorter than the length of time residents spend on the phone providing the information. So this will help you to keep the length of the questionnaire down in future surveys. The margin of error for this study is plus or minus 4.9 percentage points. If I give you a percentage at 50, it could be 45, it could be 55. And then we weight the data to better reflect population parameters, because if we don't, we're going to end up with too many older citizens and too many women. And then where appropriate, I'm going to share some of the data from the National Citizen Survey to compare what we've done with what they do. It's interesting to note that what they do is they take a standard set of questions and they ask it to lots of residents, and then they compare that to hundreds of other communities, so you not only know how you're doing, but you know where you fall in the ranking, and I'll share some of that with you. The downside is you don't get to write your own questions about Dublin's specific issues, and that's something that when we're not concerned about comparing, we can do. And just to ease your mind, our respondents match Dublin residents with respect to gender, with respect to age, with respect to the ward they live in, with respect to owning and renting homes, and with respect to race. So these are population parameters, and those are sample statistics, and you can see we're pretty darn close. All of which is to say, I think that what our sample shows is representative of the community at large, which is the whole point of inferential statistics. So let's start with overall impressions. 8 out of 10 residents consider Dublin an excellent place to live, and almost everyone else considers it a good place. In some of the past surveys you've seen, excellent and good are lumped together, but this is even just astoundingly different in that 8 out of 10 of your residents are walking around thinking this is an excellent place to live, and that's impressive. The thing to note is that NCS measures a similar question on a 4-point scale and then converts it into a 0 to 100 scale, where 0 is the worst response and 100 is the best response. We took our 5-point scale and, using a little mathematical gymnastics, try to do the same thing. And what you'll see is their number and our number are reasonably close, the 89 to the 94. But what you learn from NCS is that 89 meant that out of 250, 300 different communities, you ranked 13. Pretty high. And then 6 out of 10 residents consider Dublin an excellent place to work. And again, almost everybody else is saying it's good. And what's nice to know is that residents who actually work in Dublin, they're more likely to say it's an excellent place to work than those residents who don't work in Dublin. Note the difference between 75% and 55%. And notice again over here, when it comes to a comparison between our data, normalized from 0 to 100, and NCS, we're again pretty close. Same point is being made, but you rank third along this dimension compared to hundreds of other communities. By contrast, only 3 out of 10 residents consider Dublin an excellent place to retire. And notice here the difference between those folks who are retired and those folks who aren't is not that great. I will say this. Had we conducted these interviews on a day when it was 72 degrees, these numbers might be a little different. And when we compare our NCS figures with our figures, where again, we seem to be a little bit higher on our scale than they are, but notice you're 148th out of about 250 different communities. So when residents were asked, what do you like most about living in Dublin? That was an open-ended question, and we just took all of those responses and we dumped them into what we call a Wordle, and the size of the words reflect the number of times that word was mentioned. And what you'll see is all the different things that people said they like living in Dublin. How about amenities? So if you look at the bars, the blue means very satisfied, the red means somewhat satisfied. We've got parks, bike paths, recreation center, pools, library, public art, historic Dublin's, parking, and you can see all of these numbers show very high satisfaction. The lowest being parking in historic Dublin, and I bet that's not going to surprise anyone. How about services? So here, nearly all residents are satisfied with the services Dublin provides, from sponsored events, the chipper service, mosquito control, trash, snow, leaf collection, police protection. Not only are these percentages high, but the blue bar, the very satisfied, is really the lion's share of each of those bars, suggesting a very high level of satisfaction. So if nearly all residents are satisfied with the services Dublin provides, they're also satisfied with the city's efforts to plan, to manage, and to maintain, again, very high numbers. The lowest, and this is worth noting, the lowest is managing the flow of traffic. And just from experience, I know that anything that falls below managing city finances is something to look at. Why is that? Well, typically in surveys that we do from community to community, that always ends up at the bottom. 8 out of 10 residents have positive impressions of Dublin's roundabouts. We debated in our office what the results would be, and at the last time we met, this was a question that came out of that discussion. And the value of this question, like many of the other questions, is you may get phone calls about roundabouts, people complaining about it. Well, this shows you that 8 out of 10 think it's a step forward, not a step backwards. It's useful information to prevent you from being seduced by anecdotes. People calling and complaining where they, not that they don't have a point, but they may not be representative of the community at large. Police. 8 out of 10 residents are very satisfied with the Dublin Police Department. Almost everyone else is in jail. No, almost everyone else is somewhat satisfied. And you can see the big blue shade here. And then we compare to the NCS, and we're a little bit higher. But the point I want to make is that not only are these numbers strong, but you're rated 9th out of about 300 different communities. We didn't ask fire. We sort of ran out of room. But you can see fire is also high with a similar ranking. And in fact, most agree that Dublin police keep the community safe, are well-trained, competent professionals, and treat local residents courteously. And again, the blue portion of the bar way bigger than the red portion of the bar. So this is agree strongly, that's agree moderately. How about customer service? 4 out of 10 residents contacted a city official during the past year. Some more than once, about 20%, about 20% just once. Most called on the phone, but you'll see a quarter used email. My bet is the next time you do that, this number will be much larger. And then here we said, well, why did you call or what department? And then we try to force them into our listing of departments, and you can see planning and zoning was called by 15% of that percentage that called anybody all the way down through taxation. And then we said, so how satisfied are you? And here we made some attempt to separate out the customer service that folks received from the news they got when they called. So you can have bad news but good service. So you can see the lion's share, 60% just about, are very satisfied, and then almost a little more than a fifth are somewhat satisfied. And then we thought, well, someone's going to ask, how does that break down by department? And you can see, boy, the city forester. Where is the city forester? Those numbers are really high. The only thing I'll say, and it's in this little footnote, which is difficult to read from a distance, is that these numbers are small, so I wouldn't be quoting these too much because the N sizes are limited. But you can see these numbers generally high, with the roadway maintenance being at only 28%, very satisfied. Across all departments, residents pleased with the experience spoke most often about staff they described as responsive, knowledgeable, and polite. And then you'll see some anecdotal quotes, and we have the rest of these which are available for your review. They make interesting reading. Then when we look at the 20% or so we thought were dissatisfied, this 11 and 8, you'll see that residents who were dissatisfied complained that the contacted department was either slow to respond or did not respond at all. And you can see some representative quotes. Our favorite is the coyote quote. How about communications? Though the difference is slight, residents are more likely to feel that city officials are better at sharing information than they are at listening when important decisions are in the offing. You know, and these are really close. I just thought I would share this with you with a goal perhaps of being to see those numbers switch positions over time. But those are pretty stellar numbers. Excluding family and friends, the Dublin Villager by far is the most common single source of local news and information. And then once you get past that, you get a lot of digital sources, the website, internet in general, social networking sites, and then the 2 TV stations. So when this survey gets done again, if it gets done again, my bet is those numbers will be larger, this number will be smaller. 7 out of 10 residents have a Facebook account. Just think about that. And like, imagine being 20 years old and creating something that 7 out of 10 residents in a city like Dublin have. But fewer than 2 out of 10 have ever been to Dublin's Facebook page, and I'm hoping you view that as an opportunity to communicate with residents through Facebook. It is also true that 3 out of 10 residents have a Twitter account, but only 1 out of 20, this little 6% here, follow the city on Twitter. We asked this question a lot, like last year and the year before, and we were getting lots of single-digit numbers. So this migration to Twitter is huge. So the curve line is like that. So I think Twitter is going to be a really popular way to communicate with residents, especially like in emergency situations or snowstorms. Nearly 6 out of 10 residents have been to the city's website during the past. This is not the past year. This is the past 3 months. This is huge. And my bet is there's some seasonality to this, so this number will go up once you're in the spring and summer. Priorities. So this is sort of where we depart from the kinds of questions you can get from the National Citizen Survey compared to something where you get to write your own questions. So residents were asked, when you think of issues, concerns, or problems facing Dublin, what should city officials consider their highest priority? And this was an open-ended question. I'm not going to do another clover leaf for you. We just read them and coded them, and what you'll see that a plurality of residents mentioned the schools, suggesting that the distinction between the city and school officials may be lost on many. And then other top priorities involve the flow of traffic and public safety. But what's typical of open-ended questions is notice the longest bar is 20%. And here there were about 30% of the respondents who didn't come up with anything. But then we said, here are 9 potential community initiatives. And then we encouraged these respondents to identify their highest priority. And what you'll see is for a plurality of residents, improving the flow of traffic, remember I mentioned that earlier, is a top priority. Also popular are projects involving the Bridge Street District and Dublin's library. And you'll see that these 3 sort of hang together at 3 out of 10 or better. But then a second tier of initiatives involves shops, restaurants, bike paths. Shops and restaurants means encourage shops to come to Dublin, and they're both like 2 out of 5, nope, 1 out of 5, 20%. And then the third tier, initiatives with the least appeal, deal with the rec center, parkland, the arts, and building a new city hall. I'm not sure who that respondent was. Sorry. And this should make the highest priority. Then we said, okay, let's just focus on arts for a minute. When residents focus just on the arts, these are fixed choices we asked the respondent to choose. What we discovered was an outdoor amphitheater here was popular with almost 40%, but public art was much less popular. That was the least popular of these 4 choices. And then we offered the same sort of question for parkland, and remember, in and of itself, parkland was rated pretty low, but when you get people to focus on parkland, if the city pursues it, residents favor river frontage and natural wooded areas over athletic fields and pavilions, and this will have some implications for the Bridge Street District. How convenient. So half of Dublin residents consider themselves familiar with plans for the Bridge Street District. A little bit of cheating because the project received significant coverage in the local media shortly before the survey was conducted. So we were in the field the 7th to the 17th of February, and you can see in the middle and late January there was pretty significant coverage of it. Residents were queried about 4 components of the Bridge Street District. And what we learn is interest is strongest in additional parkland along the river, a pedestrian bridge over the river, and an increase in civic activity, which is likely to come from things like a plaza, more green space, city offices, and a relocated library. Interest is less in expanding Dublin's downtown to the east side of the Scioto River and along Riverside Drive, and in more housing options within walking distance to the amenities. These folks, by and large, have houses. So the next question said, well, what would make the Bridge Street District appealing to young professionals? What would get them to come? And again, this was an open-ended question. And what we learned, big surprise, a plurality of residents noted that young professionals would be drawn to the Bridge Street District by restaurants, bars, and other nightlife opportunities. But here you'll notice that many also mention housing opportunities. And this might be more appropriate for those young professionals than it would be for many of the respondents who currently own their own home. A walkable environment was also popular. It gives you just a little bit of flavor for what our respondents said, so you're not thinking there's just numbers as opposed to actual people offering comments. And this is sort of an interesting thing. If you build it, they would come, but not if they can't park. The library. So in more than 8 out of 10 households, at least one resident has been to the city's library during the past year. So you're driving down the street, and out of every 10 houses you pass, 8 of those houses had somebody go to the library in the past year. That's I mean, how many community assets are there that are used by 80% of the population? And it could be the respondent, but it could be some other member of the household. So that is a widely used community asset. And then residents were asked, suppose that the city set out to create a 21st century library. What would it be like? What would it offer? What could residents do there? And what you learn is that many of the suggestions offered by residents involve technology. So this was an open-ended question. We just summarized the results. Again, the bars are relatively short, but as you look down, you have adding or improving computers, digital content, online services, and software, much more common than suggestions like doing more for children or providing more meeting space or expanding the size of the library. So the emphasis here, even though you think of it as a facility where people go, the emphasis is on technology. And again, this will give you some flavor for what those respondents said. And those are all provided for you in the big notebook. If additional funds are needed to improve the library, 1 out of 4 residents claims to be very likely to contribute financially, and then another 2 out of 5, that's like the 42% here, claim to be somewhat likely. I'd be careful with these data. Everyone's a big shot, you're not like actually asking with your hand out. So, but what it does tell me is that people aren't just in the spirit of it opposed to even thinking about this. So I wouldn't be quoting the numbers, but the direction is promising. And you think about it, think about how many families have school-aged children versus how many families actually use the library. This number is much larger, so the natural constituency is like 8 out of 10. A little bit about the demographics of our residents. Half the voting age residents are younger than 45. Only 1 out of 10 is 65, and the average age is 46. So the point to be made here is that this is just voting age folks, so the average age of the community at large is probably 35 if you add in the kids. Typical resident has been living here for 14 years. What's that? Average is 14 years. 8 out of 10 residents are white. Nearly 1 out of 8 is Asian. More than 6 out of 10 residents are employed full-time. And then we did a similar sort of set of questions in New Albany, and what was really amazing to me is that here as in there, the percentage of homemakers and retirees is exactly the same, not only as each other, but as in New Albany, it was 13% in each case. And then we said among residents not employed full-time, you have another 4 out of 10 that are employed part-time. So it comes out to about 3 out of 4 of your residents are employed, either full-time or part-time. Among residents employed either full-time or part-time, 6 out of 10 work in another community. Almost half of Dublin's households earned $150,000 or more in 2012. 3 out of 10 earned $100,000 or yes, and we believe the median income is about $140,000+. Among the residents interviewed, 8 out of 10 own a freestanding house or condo, fewer than 2 out of 10 rent. Just 3 out of 4 are married. And this is just amazing to me. More than 6 out of 10 residents have a child at home. So if you look at the census, that number's about, it's about 45%, not 63%. But we added a new category. 18 to 26. So these are like boomerang kids, you know, they go away, they come back. So that's huge. That's like as large as the 13 to 17 group. That's a lot of kids who are back home. And whenever I show statistics like that, I see heads nodding, like, oh yeah, I've got one of those myself. 2 out of 3 residents have ridden a bicycle during the past year. Some ride more frequently than others, and we included this because someone needed this for some grant or whatever. Then the most popular television stations for local news are CMH and BNS, not a lot of Channel 6 or 28 watchers. Nearly 6 out of 10 residents subscribe to the Columbus Dispatch. For the life of me, I can't tell you what happened to the other part of the chart. It's gone. Well, so be it. And then still, to this day, most are reading the print edition, but that will change. The last section, I think, technology. Technology is important to me because it provides ways to communicate in a much more efficient way than in other ways. And so you learn in a community like Dublin, everybody, with some very limited exceptions, has internet access at home. And most folks seem happy with the speed of the internet service and the choice of providers. And then in a very predictable pattern, they're less happy with how much they have to pay. No surprise. So this seems like perfectly normal. Nearly 8 out of 10 residents own a smartphone. So that just seems high as well. Highlights. What did I learn? So most residents consider Dublin a desirable community. They're highly satisfied with the city's amenities, especially the parks, the services provided by the city, notably trash collection, and the treatment they receive when they contact city officials. Residents also praise the Dublin schools, their status as a separate entity notwithstanding, and the roundabouts. Though most residents are enamored of Dublin as a place to live and a place to work, the city draws less praise as a place to retire, you know, probably weather-related. Residents see Dublin as safe, clean, green, and convenient. Many describe it as family-oriented and value the city's sense of community. Residents' top priorities are clear: improve the flow of traffic on Dublin streets and roads, make the Bridge Street District a reality, and bring the Dublin branch of the Columbus Metropolitan Library into the 21st century. Among the various components of the Bridge Street District, interest is stronger in additional parkland along the Scioto River, the pedestrian bridge, and an increase in civic activity, the result of things like a plaza, green space, city offices, and a relocated library. Interest is less strong, but not by much, in the expansion of downtown Dublin to and along Riverside Drive and in housing options within walking distance of the district's amenities. Respondents also observed that restaurants, bars, and other entertainment venues, coupled with retail stores, including small boutiques and specialty shops, would go far in attracting young professionals. And the local branch of the Columbus Library is used by more than 8 out of 10 Dublin households. Couldn't help but repeat that. For most residents, equipping this facility for the 21st century centers on technology as opposed to the sort of the structure. More and improved digital content, computers, computer software, and online services. But then, of course, there's some low-tech suggestions, like more programs and space for kids, rooms for meetings, expanded quiet areas, and a cafe or coffee shop. At least one resident in 4 would be strongly inclined to contribute financially if updating the library requires additional funds. Others would be less strongly inclined, but again, careful with that finding. When residents of Dublin contemplate additional parkland, more favor river frontage and natural wooded areas than they do athletic fields and facilities, pavilions and shelter houses. And then when residents contemplate the arts in Dublin, more favor an outdoor amphitheater and an indoor performing arts center than art galleries, exhibit space, and public art. For a plurality of residents, the local paper is the primary source of community news, aside from family and friends. The website's also popular. And though many residents have a Facebook account, few have visited the city's Facebook page, and on a smaller scale, the same is true for Twitter, so opportunity there. Everyone in the community, with some limited exceptions, have internet access, and most have smartphones. And finally, residents of Dublin tend to be married, have kids at home, some not so kid-like, and own a freestanding house or condo. Most are employed either full or part-time, probably 75%. The average age is 46, and the median household income is just short of $150,000.
Questions?
That was kind of like a fire hose of information. I'm looking forward to reading the written report. Thank you.
Anyone else?
You didn't comment on the services as a comparison to other cities. Is that because they were just, the ones you picked were sort of precisely focused on Dublin?
Well, what you discover from the 5 I showed you as an example is that the pattern is very similar. So when you look at the other communities and you look at Dublin, there's really not much difference. Dublin always ranks what they call much above, with few exceptions. But the National Community Survey, really, that's some sort of somebody else's. I don't want to speak on behalf too much about their research. But my take is that what they measured and what we measured on baseline variables are pretty similar.
Okay.
Anyone else? How will, I mean, I understand that it's going to be available on the city's website and so forth. How will we receive hard copy? Very good.
We have some printed copies here for you. I can place them in the back room or give them to you now, but the complete report is online.
Great. Very good.
The last thing I'll say is, since I'm local, that if anyone has any questions or needs more discussion, just tell Sandra and she'll call. I'll come back.
Well, we appreciate the summary very much. As the Vice Mayor said, I think we look forward to, digging into the actual details of your report, and, but it certainly looks generally positive. We appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda portion of our agenda. There are 7 items listed on tonight's consent agenda. Does any council member wish to remove any one or more of the items listed this evening? Hearing nothing, I would move then that we approve the actions for the 7 items listed on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Judy, would you call for the vote, please?
Vice Mayor Salee.
Yes?
Mayor Lucklider.
I just want to know for the record, I have to abstain with respect to the first item, the minutes, but I would vote yes on the remaining 6. Thank you.
Mr. Reiner.
Yes.
Mr. Keenan.
Yes.
Ms. Cheney Cirker.
Yes.
Mrs. Sporing. Mr. Gerber.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Moving on to a tabled item, it's Resolution 14-13. Why don't you read that into the record, please?
Approving amendments to the agreement between the City of Dublin and the Dublin Soccer League and authorizing the city manager to execute the amended agreement.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ehrman and, excuse me. Yes? No. Is that correct, Judy?
Pardon?
We didn't have anybody sign up for items not on the agenda.
Right, we didn't.
Okay. Mr. Ehrman, are you going to lead this off?
I will, thank you. Before you tonight are actually 2 separate items, the Resolution 1413, and also the other tabled item that is not included in that actual amended agreement is the Dublin School Soccer Academy and some of the input that council was seeking for that, and then a recommendation from staff. So I'll take both of those into account, and I will be happy to provide you all with a little bit more background information, some of which is responsive to requests for what are other communities out there doing to accommodate soccer, some of the models that exist. As complicated as you think things are in Dublin, I think you can pick any community across the country and you'll find a very similar situation. We are not certainly separate from anyone. So I think me presenting some of those models to you, talking a little bit about some of the components might help you understand some of the differences out there and some of the things that I think are some of the issues here in Dublin. And then with that, I'll wrap that up with how I think the recommendations coming forward fit into a solution rather than creating more of a problem. So with that, you remember last time I talked a little bit about the pyramidal approach towards accommodations for levels of service, and that model is one that you'll find typically in just about any other community. The recreation component being the strong base and the obligation to the community primarily, with the other two levels of higher competition above that. There are a variety of different approaches to having that program in place. Again, this kind of a structure exists just about everywhere you look. Dublin is no different, and the problems that exist with almost any youth sport out there, as the more popular the sport becomes and the more opportunities and levels that exist, and so do some of the expectations and hopes and dreams and ideas. So we are a community that is consistent with all of those types of growths across the country. One of the things that does stand us a little bit different from some of the others is that we actually have 4 organizations who have been historically involved with implementing this structure. I think you'll find a variety of different approaches towards this, some of which, there may be just one entity providing all these layers. And with that, it's a little bit easier to manage, but when you have 4 different organizations trying to create some of the different levels and then work collaboratively in between, some of the passions of the organization-based passion gets in the way of some of those more community-based global approaches. I think the other thing that creates a problem for us as a city is we obviously own the fields, and with the resource in our hands and the distribution and allocation of that resource, obviously we're caught in the middle of some of the needs out there in the community. The city has intervened multiple times over the years. As you know, we've tried restructuring the process of board structures, the allocation for different organizations, the makeup of different organizations, and all of which have been valiant efforts to try to move forward in the most positive method, even such that we had agreements with each of the organizations independently. Then we switched back to the Dublin Soccer League, having those agreements and managing those agreements. So that's kind of the background of Dublin and where we are. As you look throughout the country, what you'll find are basically 2 primary models. The first model is a permit or fee-based model. This is a type of model that we typically will accommodate just about every service we have here in Dublin, from our community center over at the recreation center to our pricing structures and so forth. And it's based on who qualifies to use it. And there is a required permit for it, so it takes out the agreement, the formal agreements. It is more based on, here are the requirements for you to use this facility, and you can use it based on those requirements. In this case, this structure also requires a set of priorities. And from a recreation, non-recreation status to a not-for-profit status, how the organization is valued in the community, resident versus non-resident consistency, these types of things are taken into the priorities of those allocations. And then the fee structure is obviously based on the subsidized versus non-subsidized approach. What's our philosophy? Who do we want to serve? To what level we want to serve? And then field fees, you could rent those fields on a field basis, a per field basis, or a per participant basis. So each one of these models, as you can imagine, there are 150 different variables and 150 different factors to weigh into how this model would work for any one community, and every one of them is pretty much different. Some of the interesting points about this, I put in some of the pros and cons. Obviously, one of the pros is we don't have any formal agreements with anyone. It is based on a requirement. I mean, if you meet the requirement, you're getting the fields, here's the allocation process and the fees according to that, meeting the requirements. It also creates a complete independence, meaning each of the organizations can govern and run and do everything that it wants to do and make the decisions based on what it feels is the most important for that organization. If they don't comply with the requirements set by the city or the municipality, then obviously then they may be lower on the totem pole for priorities and then pay a higher fee for those fields. Permit enforcement is a difficult thing. It requires staffing. So if you have permits issued, you have to have a way to enforce that, and requires staff time to get out in front of it all. And then from the administrative application process and approval process, there's obviously some staff time and some degree of involvement with the existing city staff to make all of that happen. One of the interesting things that I found as I talked with some of the people under this kind of an environment, for those who are the highest priority who don't pay fees for the fields, they will tend to claim that they need all of the fields. So there's a hoarding of fields based on those who don't pay fees and feel like they are the priority. Conversely to that, the other thing that happens is for those who are paying for the fields, they will tend to overcrowd the fields and put 6 or 8 teams on one field so they don't have to rent more than one field. So there are some issues that are being dealt with too. I mean, not every one model works for every one community because it brings in a whole other set of variables. But that's kind of the nutshell of that type of an approach. And then the second one that I wanted to mention too was whether the municipality actually runs the recreation component of that league. And obviously if the municipality is managing or administering that recreation level, they also need to manage what goes on at the club level above that, because the city programs obviously come first, and then everything above that would be typically based on that permit fee-based structure thereafter. All of the accommodations are dependent on the municipality, so all of the decisions, the difficult ones, the easy ones, are handled by staff and or direction given by council. And then residency requirements are typical for these types of programs. Some of the pros, it takes away from the value of having community organizations run some of these programs, and I think community organizations brings that sense of community to a lot of extent, and I think there's a lot of value in that. It requires a business model, one of which would be similar to the ones that we have for just about every program we run over in Recreation Services, but it certainly is something that would require a little bit more management. Fully designed by the municipality, so again, all of those decisions and all of the situations and issues are dealt with internally. So there are obviously some pros and cons to this system as well. So I just wanted to give you an overview of that, but I think it's really important to note that each one of these, none of which is a comprehensive overview of the models that exist across the country. These are the foundations on which most of them are built, and then there are all of these other factors that lend into those types of models. So what I would like to kind of talk about here a little bit is, what does that mean for Dublin, and why are we here tonight and discussing all of these things? And as we take these things with these models and the pros and the cons and the current situations into play, I think I can draw some relevancies to what I just talked about, some of the things that are working in those different models to what is being proposed tonight in the resolution that's before you. And the primary one is the Recreation League. In my opinion, I feel that the Recreation League is our #1 priority. That is one that has been set by City Council direction, and all of the decisions are focused on making sure that that component of soccer is accounted for before anything else. I am a firm believer that the recreation program needs to be the primary focus and not being taken away from by influence from club and higher level components of the sport. Allowing whatever organization that is to focus solely on that recreation component. Mainly because it does serve all of the community, all of the needs, it accommodates everyone, it's non-exclusive, and then the residency requirements are very stringent in that they all, from a corporate resident, City of Dublin resident to a school district resident component. So one of the items that we'll talk about in Resolution 1413 talks about separating that recreation component so it can focus on that programming. The second area there is the middle tier area. The middle tier, in my opinion, one of the things that has to happen in order for us to work together amongst each of the organizations to everybody has their defined role. And the middle tier soccer in Dublin currently has fluctuated quite a bit. It has moved from a variety of different trials and errors and issues. But where it started and where it originated was the intent to create that defined middle tier layer, which I think is very important. And then the third level with the select and the elite organizations, it needs to be a very defined limitation of who it's serving, and I would recommend that it's limited to an A and a B team only, because anything above that A and a B, or anything below the A and a B team, you're getting watered down into the middle tier section, and then that's where that competition starts to create amongst organizations, and it doesn't allow for each of the organizations to work with each other. It tends to force them to work against each other. So the other big component of that is the whole collaboration of this whole model, where each of the organizations should be contributing to coach training at every level, at the basic level, at the entry level of coaches. There needs to be some influence from, how do coaches do this job so that we create a feeder system that works for those competitive clubs, and it doesn't focus solely on keeping the kids at that recreation level. If there's ones that want to excel, how do we give them that knowledge? And then from a program development standpoint, each of them needs to collaborate on developing all of the programs for the same purpose. There are a lot of camps that could be offered that could do a very similar job instead of contracting those out to other organizations or businesses, and then creating the agreeable transitions between these layers. And so one of the things that I would like to talk about once we get through the actual resolution of this is, what do we do with those club organizations if we're separating them from the actual recreation component of that? And I'll get to that when we get to some of the school program conversation. But if we want to take one thing at a time, I'll certainly do what council pleases. But for the resolution 1413, the key components of that are solely to allow DSL to focus on its primary recreation program. That is the intent of that agreement. Eliminates the agreements with the club organizations. Restructures the DSL board of directors to include only the DSL members. It also includes the installation of more comprehensive background checks. City Council and Dublin Soccer League have approved both of those, or that item, so that is underway and currently in the process of being implemented. And then a couple of other things here. Some of the additions to the amendment that were requested from the DSL organization are the continuation of their middle school and high school programs and their DSX programs that are currently in place today. These programs aren't anything special, other than there's language in the agreement about the general recreation program not traveling outside of the Dublin community, and these programs do, just from the sake of the structure of them. So they would like to continue doing those programs. So if council were to approve this amendment, that would be added in, as well as being able to assess some of the administrative fees for the costs associated with service to the clubs, the scheduling of the fields, the lining of the fields, the player carding, the muscle representation, some of those administrative costs. And then there is a correction that was found to be needed under Article 2, Section B, Item 2, and this has to do with the school interscholastic program. Don't confuse that with the school soccer academy subject matter that will be discussed here in a few minutes. But one of the intentions is to make sure that none of the programs interfere with the interscholastic programs that the schools are offering, their sports. There was an item in there that was crossed out mistakenly, and it should be including all of DSL representation, or anyone involved with DSL should not be interfering with those schools' programs. So it was a minor oversight, and that correction just needed to be noted in there. So with that, before we move on to the other item of discussion, I guess I would ask if council pleases to approve this before moving on, or would you like for me to continue?
What's council's pleasure?
Well, first off, Matt, does that correct what I called Steve about today? That correction, is that correct? That?
Yes.
So it includes or other person associated with
Yeah,
itself.
that was, and I apologize for that. Ms. Boring was nice enough to point that out today on the phone, that there was one extra strikeout that shouldn't have been there, and that is the correction you're referring
Okay.
to on Article 2, Section B, Item 2. We're just asking for that language to remain as is and not change.
So the other question I have, I hear about the information you want to present us on the other issue, but the only thing we are considering tonight is this agreement. Any other thing when it comes to the Dublin School is information only, is that correct?
That's correct. The resolution does not include anything about the school's program.
So I'm not sure what you're asking, but if I heard you right, I'm wanting to deal with the resolution before we ask for any additional information about anything else. Yeah, but he introduced it,
Right,
if you remember what he said.
okay. I'm not hearing any objection to Kathy's proposal, so we'll proceed in that
He
fashion.
introduced it.
Are there any other, does anyone, any council member have any other questions of Matt based on his presentation or what was in your packet?
Yeah, I did have something in here that I wanted to address. Of course, I always have to go through it. It talks about the treasurer. There it is. Well, we don't have, I have the strikeout version. So it's Article 4, organization. And 4B, where it talks about the treasurer, since we're defining this as a treasurer, it says the treasurer shall have custody of and signatory authority over all DSL funds. Considering some of the problems we have had in the community before, why are we not asking for a secondary, although the authority that can never be verified, but why are we not asking for a secondary signature?
I don't think that's an issue, Kathy. We can certainly add that in if it pleases council.
Well, I think we need to have that in.
A secondary signature on what?
Any
Talking about-
checks?
You're talking about check signing ability or what have you?
Yes.
Yeah, for funds. That's
Right.
pretty standard operating procedure for most organizations. So it's probably not a bad idea, but it seems these are the kinds of organizations that you read about all over the country, especially in our school programs, booster program. It's almost every week in the paper, somebody.
That's what stood out to me.
And there's a lot of money going through here. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, as I understand.
Yes, there is.
Currently, the authority lies within the executive director to sign, and this indicates that the treasurer would also be a signatory to that. I think, just for clarification, Kathy, you're saying that there should be a requirement for both signatures?
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, the way I'm reading this, though, it says that the executive director may serve as the treasurer. So you don't have a separation there of duties even.
That was a correction that we made back in July of last year, because at previous organization structure, the executive director was the treasurer, and it indicated that he had to be the treasurer, and it was suggested by council that that be removed so that somebody on the board also has that treasury responsibility.
But it says here may. So it's not mandatory, but it gives the executive director, the way this is written, that they can say, well, I'm also going to be the treasurer. So, I mean, I don't agree with that. I think that this treasurer should be a separate position from the board chair or the executive director.
Yeah, the executive director is a staff position, and it makes sense that that staff position would be able to be a signer.
So far, the secretary,
But also-
yeah, but if you look at this, they're doing everything.
Yeah.
The executive director is going to be the secretary of the board, they're going to be the treasurer, develops all the programs. I mean, what's the board do?
Or the chairman of the board, whatever. Usually there's, with the check signing ability, they may limit it to anything over $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever the number is. Anything under that can be signed by the executive director. Anything over a certain amount requires the signatory of the
On
chair.
an organization like this, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, because
But
the
that doesn't
day-to-day.
say that here.
No, it doesn't, I agree. I'm
But you
just
would
saying
always have a second person that would be auditing those records and making sure that the monies are being allocated appropriately.
Well, I think Mike's right, some of the past history, and I hear what you're saying, but somehow that's slipped by.
Yeah, well, and it would be easy enough, you know, at a monthly board meeting, here are the bills I need to pay, I've signed these checks, will you
Right.
And I mean, I don't know anything about the day-to-day operations of the staff, at the staff level.
So I'll make a motion that we've had discussion, and Mike, you probably have a better way of expressing it, but do we need to make a motion that something like that be included, or just direct it to be included?
I wonder, Mr. Smith, do you have a suggestion for us?
Yeah, we can change, from what I'm understanding, what Ms. Boring is saying is really Section B there, if I'm reading it correctly, really deals with the duties of the treasurer. We can just pull that out and not have that under the executive director there, and we can add a line about including 2 signatures.
Okay.
Would it make sense?
Is that 2 signatures for every payment, or a payment just below, above a certain level?
Well,
I don't know enough about how much their bills are typically,
Well,
90% of their bills are under $500.
Yeah.
well, and the other thought is, and, DSL is a separate entity. I mean, yes, by contract, we can have them agree to certain things, but I don't know the manner in which they operate, so I don't know what the right number is there. But
Yeah.
by requiring 2 signatures,
That probably
That-
gives you a check some.
That's your recommendation under the circumstances that
Yep.
we stop there?
Yes, sir.
Would it make sense to have those individuals that are entrusted with finances to have similar background checks?
Well, everyone who goes through everyone associated with DSL now has to go through the background checks per the approval that council made last
But I
go-around.
thought that was specific to crimes involving children.
It has a whole list. The background checks that we have looked into have a whole list of crimes and offenses that
Perfect.
very well
Okay.
may
I
show
just-
up on those. And we're still working on weeding that out, but we can work on that based on your prior approval and getting.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
And I have another question, and I hope you can follow, excuse me, I hope that you can follow along with what I'm trying to ask. Under Article 2, organizational requirements, number 3, DSL board meetings shall be open to the public. I read something in here that they had a board meeting and then executive meetings, which is kind of funny that how's executive meetings, are they, I know, it's not like the sunshine law for us, but if you only have 5 people on the board and 4 on the executive meeting, it doesn't make sense. So what I'm asking is, since this is open to the public, how do you establish how is the executive board established? And are they allowed to vote, or are they only supposed to bring recommendations back to the regular board?
The current bylaws state that the executive committee, which consists of all of the elected recreation members of the organization that are on the board, is the body that would approve all contracts and agreements. The other members of the board include the club organizations. Those club organizations are typically who they have contracts and agreements with, so they have been excluded from that approval process. So to make sure that there is representation of the general membership or the general recreation membership. So it's just to approve the agreements that the soccer league were to enter into. As far as executive committee, there is an executive committee and committee meetings, but it does not reflect the full board.
Okay, so by their bylaws then, are they to bring things back to the board, their recommendation, or can they pass a vote and represent the board as that representation, having that?
They have the authority to vote on agreements only. So they can vote on
Okay.
the agreements only. So anything that the committee has discussed, it's just like any other committee. It's expected that that information from that committee would come back to the full board before implementation or
Okay.
approval.
So the information we got about the executive board meeting and not supporting this, they did not then bring it back to the regular board for a recommendation. Is that correct?
There were 2 instances that occurred, one with the executive committee at the March 4th meeting, and then another one in April. So there were 2 meetings that were held, one of which was to talk about the items, whether the board was in support or not in support of, and then was discussed amongst the full board to get its input. Then there was a second meeting called, and a vote was asked for, indicating that City Council had requested the input just from the Executive Committee. So there was a vote based on that request from City Council.
Did we give that direction? That we asked for just the executive committee? Does anybody remember that?
I know there was discussion about taking the information back to the DSL board to have discussion on the items that were being discussed at City Council.
But we never gave direction for the executive.
I don't remember any specification that it'd be the executive board.
I don't think we really referred to the executive board at all.
I sure, because the one that we have, that a motion to support, we're not even going there because we're not even talking about the academy. It's not part of our, what we are looking at right now. So their bylaws, we can't do anything for the organizational requirements here. Although we say that DSL board meetings shall be open to the public, we can't say that about the executive committee, open to the public. See, here's what I'm waiting for. When I think about an executive committee, I think of when we go in executive session. I know those are 2 different things. But when we say the board meetings have to be open to the public, and then you call an executive committee here, was that open to the public? Because if it was not, then this motion that shouldn't be public. Do you see where I'm going? It's like, why is one open to the public and the other isn't? And where did they meet? Did they let everybody know where they were meeting so people could attend it?
That was a committee meeting that was called, and it was not an executive session from a
Gotcha.
board meeting or
Okay.
anything like that.
I'm
It was-
with you now.
Executive session is different than executive committee.
Right.
Correct.
Executive committees are generally made up of the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer.
Right. I just got that. The bell ran off.
Oh,
I just got that. Got it. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
I just wanted to clarify, I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify something you just said, Matt, because I thought I had earlier heard that in this new agreement for tonight's vote, that we are removing the club membership of the board, that this would be recreational members only.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. We have some folks signed up to speak to this particular resolution this evening, and I just want to make a few comments before I invite those people forward. I'd just like to say, with all due respect, that in the interest of everyone's time, yours included, that we ask that those people that have signed up to speak not repeat the testimony that we've previously heard in support of the status quo. We have an extensive record to that effect, and we expect that the majority, if not all of you that are in attendance this evening to speak to this matter are supportive. But if you're not, certainly you will have the opportunity to come forward and say so. So, having said that, I'm inclined to begin by inviting Mr. McMahon to comment, followed by the DSL board member who has signed up to speak, and then I would ask the rest of you that have signed up to speak to use your best discretion. So, with that as an outline, Mr. McMahon, if you'd like to come forward.
My name is Ken McMahon, live at 5998 Rings Road, Dublin, Ohio, 43016. Not exactly sure as far as what you want me to comment on, whether it's about the specific stuff here or whether it's about the school program, because there was nothing about the school program that's been brought up in this particular part of the motion, but.
Well, let me be clear. You signed up to speak.
Correct.
So.
Whatever I want to talk about. Okay.
It's your
Not the school program.
it's your 5 minutes.
Okay. The net is that, as far as the school program is concerned, first of all, there's been a tremendous amount of information and misinformation about the school program. Matt has put up that it's U9 to U14, which of course is basically the age groups where U8 to U14. And it's doing what we do. That's, we've already talked about that, no need to go into any more detail. But the Friday Night Lights program that they have advertised on the community education program site indicated age 4 to 13. So that is certainly significantly different than age U9 to U14. In the fall, the Dublin Soccer Academy advertising on the community education site indicated age 3 to 8. So my question is, as far as what the program is really what is the program? The email that went out from the school board indicated it was a middle school program. And talking to Chris Valentine, it's certainly not designed to be an interscholastic middle school program, but that was the implication in the email. So as far as the Dublin Soccer League is concerned, which I have been going to their meetings since 1997, I think that this Dublin Soccer Academy, age 4, age 5, age 6, age 7, it has nothing to do with Dublin United. However, it is, in my opinion, in direct competition with what the Dublin Soccer League is doing. The Dublin Soccer League starts at U4. Well, we have age 3 to 8 at this school program, on Sunday afternoons at a couple of the high schools. Furthermore, I've talked to a couple of the high school varsity coaches. They knew nothing about the program until they received the email from the schools, those being the two coaches at Dublin Scioto High School. So there's so much information out there about it, but there's no detail about it, and it's not supposed to impact the Dublin Soccer League negatively. But age 3, are we actually recruiting starting at age 3 to let people know about the program that starts at U9? Does it really take 6 years worth of people attending a program so they figure out what it is? So those are my thoughts and concerns about the school program. Is it just seems like when you talk about age 3 to 8, that's right in the heart of the Dublin Soccer League. And yet they're going to turn around and say it has no negative effect whatsoever in the Dublin Soccer League. I think it's going to have a tremendous negative effect. And the schools also have a tremendous advantage over us public entities, if you will, in that they have a very captive audience. They can send out an email. For example, when they didn't like, someone had put together a flyer that once again was not a Dublin United flyer, but they had put together a flyer. The Dublin schools didn't like it. I received within, an hour an email saying, hey, there's a lot of misinformation out there, da-da-da-da. It went to basically every Dublin school resident. So they have a tremendous reach that the rest of us don't have. As I have mentioned before, we work with, in fact, 2 of the Dublin high school coaches have been coaches or are coaches in our program. We work with them on a regular basis. We're more than happy to support exactly what they want to do. And what we will do, we'll not only support the high school program, we have a feeder program, if you will, but at the same time, we will not adversely affect the Dublin Soccer League. In fact, we work very closely with the Dublin Soccer League. So with that.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Do you have any comment to make with respect to Resolution 14-13?
As far as we are concerned, the only thing that I would make mention to is keep in mind there's a lot of checks that they write that are small checks. So as far as Kathy attempting to exchange or change the bylaws around, just be careful about that. In that there are, I would strongly suggest you put a dollar amount on that. And like I say, no, I'm as, the school program is really what I am concerned that will have an adverse effect on the DSL.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a proposal to you that we have nothing to do with the school program. We have nothing to do with those coaches or whatever. So I would like to suggest that anyone who wants to talk about the school program be referred to the school board, because we have absolutely no influence, and that's not what we're dealing with tonight. So I would hope that we would direct people, if you have talk about the school program, the soccer academy, like the volleyball academy, that we refer you to the school board.
Kathy, in that regard, I'm getting a little confused. I thought last time we adopted the records check, the ID checks, and I understand subsequent to that the DSL board has as well. I thought we ultimately said, here, let's have this vetted by that board, DSL, have them look this over, take a vote, and bring it back to us. Is that, am I off base here?
They did take a vote, though, yeah. They did take a vote.
Okay, so the only issue before us is they, in essence, have ratified this. They're asking us now to ratify it. Is that,
They have not ratified the agreement itself. They have voted it whether they were in support of or not in support of the topics that we brought up here tonight, without this school program being considered, because it's not part of the amendment.
Yeah, it wasn't a formal
They just
vote. It
discussed
was,
that.
they discussed it and determined whether they were in favor of or not in favor. So they're waiting for council to vote, and then they'll vote formally. But they did have a discussion and identified, was it
okay?
4-2?
I guess,
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Carrie Stearns? Can you identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, Mayor. Carrie Stearns, 7269 Coventry Woods Drive. I'd first like to thank council for allowing me to speak. I was going to go somewhere else, but I need to start out with what you're discussing when it comes to the amendment and the approval, the vote, the not vote. I'm a member of this board. I can speak to that. When Matt made the council aware that there was a correction that needed to be made by you, that is a complete misstatement. The reason why our board did approve that amendment was because that was in there. So that correction that he's asking you to put back into that amendment, we would not have agreed to it without it being taken out. So that's a misstatement from our board.
Let me clarify that. I asked him to put it in. He did not say, I saw it and I asked that he bring it up and put it in. Is that not correct?
That's correct. If it's the same correction that you're referring
That the school program is the preferred provider, no, the Dublin Soccer League does not support that being in our, we agreed that would not be
That's not
there.
in the,
That's not an agreement.
That, actually, that is in the agreement,
Oh.
but that's been in the agreement since.
It's been taken out.
Can you show us where it is? That's not the correction Matt was talking about at all.
Ms. Stearns, the comments that you're attributing to Mr. Ehrman, are those the comments that he's made at this evening's meeting? Is
Yes.
that what you're speaking to?
Yes.
Okay.
So there may be a little confusion there, but I do want to continue as to what you're speaking about, the confusion in this,
Yeah, but-
with the vote or
But-
non-vote.
But just to be clear, Ms. Stearns, I think that the exchange between Mr. Ehrman and Ms. Boring was with respect to signatory authority, am I correct?
No, the other thing was about no coach or other person associated with DSL shall interfere in any manner, blah, blah, blah. And they had stricken out, or any other person. Now I've asked for that to be included again, and that's what he has on our desk tonight.
that's in
Okay.
reference to the interscholastic program of the
Okay.
schools, not the
Okay.
community ed
I
program.
understand that.
Okay, good. Go ahead then, please.
About the vote and non-vote on these amendments and ratification, we did have a vote in an executive committee meeting. We never had a vote with the full board because our clubs at that point had a pecuniary interest in the school program. So that's why a vote was never valid for our full board.
Excuse me, would you repeat that, why it wasn't valid?
Well, he never asked it to be a vote nor brought a motion to the table at a board meeting. So it was never a vote in a full board meeting. Matt said specifically that this council did not want it to be a vote, that you only wanted it to be in support of or not in support of. We then did a vote, an actual vote, motion seconded in an executive committee meeting with the only members of the board that would have been able to vote on it, is why we did it in that setting.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
I think so.
If you don't mind.
Please, go ahead.
I am an elected board member of the Dublin Soccer League. I understand the challenges the soccer situation has brought to all of you, and I hope you understand we, the Dublin Soccer League, share that frustration. I'm not here tonight to speak on behalf of the DSL board. I speak tonight on behalf of the Dublin Soccer League, its staff, and to give the league's view on the Dublin Soccer Academy or school program, since it was asked. The Dublin Soccer League consists of over 2,400 participants and 3 staff members. Executive Director John Muir has over 20 years with the DSL, Nancy Fuller almost 20 years, and Patrice Kelly 5. There are 4 elected members of the DSL board. That is 4 volunteer board members who chose to join the DSL board and support the best interests of the DSL. My agenda being on this board is quite simple. I support what is the best for the Dublin Soccer League, and more importantly, I support the staff and their views and opinions. Why anyone would choose to be on this board and not do the same. I'm not paid for this position. It is completely voluntary. The Dublin Soccer League staff has made it clear since being blindsided by Matt Ehrman about the Dublin Soccer Academy or school program in February 2013 that they do not or would not support this program. They submitted a letter to council which was given to Mr. Ehrman on February 11th that was to be shared with you but was not until April 4th, 2013 when I brought it for you guys to each have. Not only have the facts about this program been misleading, they continually change according to the audience. The Dublin Soccer League does not support or endorse a program which is not only not needed in this community, but would inevitably harm or damage the DSL. The ages of the children targeted by the school program are the exact ages of the children in the DSL, and the criteria to participate match us to the letter. Matt Ehrman has misrepresented the view of the Dublin Soccer League to this council, and I'm here to ask that the members of this council respect the position of the DSL in not supporting or endorsing the Dublin Soccer Academy or school program. I find it rather unfair and inappropriate that the facts of the school program that are being released to the community by not just Matt Ehrman, but Marianne Grimes are misleading families. The communications from them have misled families into thinking their kids will play for their collective schools and that it's interscholastic. I'd like to see the Dublin Schools community education program held accountable to speak honestly to our Dublin families. They should not misrepresent that the DSL supports this program. There are numerous private, successful, thriving soccer programs in this community already, including DSL and Dublin United. School resources would be better used serving at the core mission of a public school district, which is to educate our children instead of competing with private, successful, established organizations. I realize the Dublin Soccer Academy or school program could move forward regardless of the actions of the DSL and the people in its community involved. But again, I ask in closing that this council respect that the Dublin Soccer League has not supported it or endorsed it and does not ever plan to in the future. We ask for you to support and respect our position. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. James Sturm?
We're going to have to listen to another academy.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Jim Sturm. I reside at 3204 Saybrook Court, Dublin. I'm here tonight as the president of the Mid-Ohio Soccer League, or as it's more commonly known, MOSL. I asked Dublin City Council to adopt the proposal, both the one that's approved for you now as well as the school's proposal. This proposal, if approved, will permit the continued growth of youth soccer in the City of Dublin and the Dublin School District. Nothing in this proposal will restrict or otherwise impede any of the current soccer programming that exists in this community. This proposal merely expands the number of options, choices, and opportunities that could exist in Dublin side by side with the current clubs and leagues. Why not let the players and their parents have the opportunity to choose with their feet which type of programming, considering costs, coaches, and competitions that best suits their needs? It is noteworthy that many of those who now oppose this proposal represent an organization that just a few years ago argued before the council that they should be recognized by the city as an alternative to the then existing soccer programming, and yet now, ironically, they are arguing against additional programming choices for the residents of Dublin. Isn't choice a good thing? Again, I ask council to adopt the staff's proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name, Anthony Scirocco. Good Good evening.
Actually, whenever I hear anything about mispronouncing, I just stand up. It's a reflex from school.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Anthony Siriaco. I reside at 4915 Brand Road in Dublin, 43017. I come before you tonight actually wearing two hats, one as the president of Club Ohio, and two, more importantly, as a resident of the city of Dublin for 30 years, and one who raised two children who played soccer at very different levels. One who played at the highest of select levels, and one who played and enjoyed greatly recreation only, which has made me a firm believer in giving as much choice as possible to the residents of this community, because we all have children that want to play and have fun, and some want to do it at different levels. And for that reason, I rise tonight in support of the proposal, because for three reasons. First, we believe it puts the focus of DSL back on recreation, where it is best suited. Second, we believe that it allows the clubs independence, which the clubs have had for over a decade before the current arrangement. And the clubs, we have two clubs in this city, I'm sure you're aware, Club Ohio and Ohio Premier, who have both regional and national reputations and have brought Dublin into the light nationally and certainly regionally as a city that's very good for soccer. In addition, the clubs have brought significant revenues to the city. Tournaments, as a matter of fact, I believe our tournament that we hold every April is one of the more significant events as far as dollars brought into the city, and we work very closely with the Visitors Bureau. And third, and probably most importantly, the reason for our support is that we think it improves competition. And as Jim Sturm said before me, the most important thing is to give people choices and to have their children play at the level they feel comfortable at. So for that reason, our club is in full support. I am in full support as a resident. And as a last aside, I wanted to give a special shout out, I think, to Matt Ehrman. He's done a wonderful job here. He's been very cooperative with our club. He's been very helpful to me with any questions that I've had. And as it pains me to say, as a loyal University of Virginia grad, to give a shout out to a Hokie, I will do that proudly tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joe Proctor?
Hi, Council, Mayor.
Good evening.
I'm Joe Proctor. I reside at 4857 Avondale Ridge Drive in Dublin. The only really a couple of points that I would like to add to the conversation that's been had so far. The first is just that there was a lot of question the last time this was before the board, and I think one of the directives was around the various entities of Dublin that are involved in soccer being involved in putting a proposal in front of you. And to date, that just isn't happening. So there have been sidebar conversations, but there has not been one discussion with Dublin United. I am a Dublin United board member, but I'm also a resident, and I'm somebody who's been engaged in Dublin Soccer League as a parent with my 5 children. And so once again, we stand here with a lot of ambiguity and not a lot of dialogue going on amongst the entities that are engaged currently in soccer. So while I agree with the sentiment that choice can be a good thing, I also ask that council take into account the fact that when you have something that is working fairly well, today, I think, if I think back to last time that this issue was in front of you, I think Matt Ehrman specifically called out just kudos to the Dublin Soccer League. It's a great entity, and it's doing a fine job. I think the history over the last 8 years would say Dublin United is providing a terrific program as well at the middle tier. And then the clubs, which you just heard again from a president of one of the clubs, it has been a very successful decade and more. So here we are talking about change of something that's actually working quite well. And so the issue that I think is kind of interesting is when you provide a new choice that potentially weakens the existing choices and doesn't succeed in its own right, there's risk. There's risk to the community. Because we could wake up in a few years and have 3 weakened entities or 4 weakened entities, including the new one that's being supported. Okay? That's not part of the immediate proposal in front of you, that's the school program. But there's a lot of misinformation about that. There's a lot of seemingly misinformation about what's happened at the DSL board. What I was told was that was actually voted down. I was told, I believe at your last council meeting, that without agreement from both the DSL and this body, that there would not be an ability to change the agreement, and yet before you are issues to change the agreement again, right? And then lastly, the DSL is an organization that certainly has its faults, but at the same time, it has worked tirelessly to provide a good product, and it continues to do so. And it has multiple programs, and it has worked reasonably well at the level with the clubs, and certainly with us in the middle tier in years past. So I would ask you to, once again, take into account the fact that you have a great set of programs that are working in Dublin for providing youth-based soccer. Please recognize that and be careful. Be very careful before you seek to change what's already in existence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a shot here and call Mr. Schilling. Okay. Thank you. And lastly, Chris Clinton.
Chris Clinton, 5308 River Forest Road, Dublin, Ohio, 43017. Past chairman of Dublin Soccer League, soccer coach with actually Club Ohio. I'm actually against this agreement. I agree with the choice facility, but I'm quite confused, and I hear some people saying in the background, whispering, that they're confused about this commingling or lack of mingling of this school agreement with the Dublin United agreement or DSL agreement. What I noticed is that Matt put up on the board a nice pyramid, which really struck me as, in his words too, across the United States, these are the models for the way programs work within communities. And I don't understand why there's this impetus to break it up. 5 years ago, I was involved in the creation of a lot of these agreements, and we all saw, I came in the meetings before and thought that these would work. As Joe Proctor's just said, they pretty much do work. And the soccer landscape changes from year to year, but everybody at the end of it gets together and they work and they put soccer teams on the field, and we go from there. Jim Sturm, his organization Mosul, in order to play in the leagues that Mosul sponsors, you have to be a member of a recreation community. So I find it hard to understand how Jim can come up and talk about something that's outside of this model, like taking the 2 clubs outside of Dublin Soccer League, like is in this proposal. I just don't understand that. As I mentioned, I'm with Club Ohio. Tony Sirocco said the whole club is in support of this. I am one of many Dublin coaches within them. I'm not supported, and I don't see why Club Ohio necessarily, but I wasn't consulted, so thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's everybody that's been signed, has signed up to speak to the matter this evening. So, closing public comment at this point in time. I would ask council members if they have any comments, any questions of Mr. Ehrman, any questions of legal counsel? Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I do have a question because I was not here in the original council meeting when this was heard. And so I missed your original presentation about the reason for the consideration of a new agreement. Was our other agreement is expiring, or what was the reason for it?
No, the amended agreement that was brought before council, the initiative behind that was primarily because of the organizational dissension between all of the organizations and the focus of all of the club-related items that tend to take up a lot of the time on the Dublin Soccer League board, not allowing them to focus on the recreation program. There tends to be in each of the agreements with the clubs that is existing with the Dublin Soccer League, holding them into account of the items that are included in those agreements. It is an ongoing issue. Each of the club organizations have technically not abided by certain things in those agreements, and with those issues that arise over and over again, the soccer league does not have the time to spend on those issues, in my opinion.
So you mentioned, Matt, that there was a straw vote where they voted either in support or not in support. It really wasn't a formal motion second.
In support of the key components that were presented to council tonight in the amended agreement, and it was a unanimous vote in support of.
What we're looking at here.
That's correct.
So if we pass this tonight, it's still up to DSL board to final approve?
Yes.
So,
Well, if I may, the one gentleman actually was correct. He was here last time he heard me. You know, we have a current agreement with DSL that's in effect for another 2 years. We are asking, the city is asking for council to recommend a change, and both parties have to, you know, approve it. So if council approves it, and for some reason it goes back to the Dublin Soccer League, if they don't approve it, we still have an agreement that's in place for 2 more years that has terms and conditions on it. So if this amendment gets passed by council but not DSL, there's still an underlying agreement that's in place. That has not been terminated to my knowledge. So, you know, this would change it, but there's still one out there.
Mr. Smith, I have been thoroughly horrified at what has been going on in this community for 2 months. And I'm wondering, if they don't approve it, what is the city's other options in order to eradicate us of this little disease that's happening? Because it's obviously not about the children at this point.
Well, at that point in time, as legal counsel, and we have a current agreement in place, we would certainly offer you your legal options for moving forward, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay, I was just actually.
No, I mean, we have a current agreement in place that.
in 2 years, you'd have a chance to revisit the whole entire.
Well, yes, but even in the meantime, there, you know, we have agreement in place and there's terms, so, but we would probably discuss those outside the public setting in terms of giving you legal advice.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments from council members?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple, if I may, Tim.
Sure.
You know, I want to preface all this by saying that, you know, I believe the city ought to be involved in a rec league and a rec league only. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. That's what we do in other sports. That seems to make sense here. I, for some reason, was under the impression, excuse me, that last time we were going to table this so it could go back to the DSL board to be fully vetted, that they would vote on this and bring it back to us. I mean, here we are in our own way trying to change an agreement, and I still don't know what that board wants to do with it. The executive director of that board has not been here and to talk to us tonight, and I would think if they were supportive of it, they would have come forward. So I'm a little confused what we're doing. We're back where we were 2 months ago, where we're going to approve this agreement or disapprove it. If we do approve it, then it goes back to that board. They may accept it, they may not. So I'm not sure what we gained over the last couple months. I just don't know.
Rick, if I may, just to help clarify, some of the muddling of information and muddling of issues with the resolution versus the school program, both of them are completely separate.
And Matt, all I'm looking at is a contract, okay? And that's what I'm looking at. And everybody comes up here and talks about some other soccer league, something else. I'm trying to focus just on this agreement. And I thought this was going to go back to those folks, vetted, reviewed, signed, and come back to us for our approval. And I don't see that. It sounds like that's not what's happened. We're back to where we were. It's gone to them. They've talked about it. And now it's back before us to do the same thing that we were supposed to do, or were asked to do 2 months ago. So what's changed in the last 2 months?
Well, City Council's request for input from the Dublin Soccer League Board.
What's changed in the last 2 months?
What's changed in opinion about the agreement, the amended agreement?
Where we are in the process.
Well, in my opinion, the Dublin Soccer League Board is in favor of the items that are in the agreement. It has not formally voted to approve the agreement, but it has been a unanimous vote to accept the items in the agreement as requested from council.
Am I missing something? Do we have their minutes?
You are missing something,
Am I?
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because the Dublin Soccer Board voted is it 4-2, was it?
You're talking about the school program.
No, didn't the board,
The amendments were voted unanimously in favor or in support of.
That's what we have in front of us. This agreement.
Yes.
And am I missing the minutes, Kathy?
well, what you're seeing is a small interest group that met, so they knew they had a 2-2 vote.
No, I think that.
But they were meeting about the school issue and
Okay,
in favor
thank
of the
you.
school
Okay.
issue. As far as the contract and the agreement that is in front of you tonight, it was taken back to the board, and there was unanimous in support of that agreement.
That's right.
And I believe that information was provided to us.
That's right. I'm sorry.
That was the update that I provided to you
That's all I'm asking. No, that's
with the
okay.
minutes of the board.
That's all I'm
Right.
asking.
It's
Okay.
right there.
Okay.
How is that fact being disputed at all by anybody? Did we hear that tonight?
No, I'm not disputing that fact
No,
either. I just want to confirm.
No, I was talking about our speakers this evening because I'm confused.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a few. First off, people are working under the hypothesis that if something's working well, don't mess with it. And my theory is when I hear a hypothesis like that, I like to go back and challenge it. I don't think it's working well. I think that, if we use the same idea, we would be supporting a monopoly, and I've heard the same excuses from the cable companies, AEP, the electric companies. It's working well, let's not introduce competition. And that's what you all have said, it's competition. It's not an adjunct to the program, it's competition, and it sounds like you're fearful of it. As I had mentioned, it's just very, very discouraging to see what has been going on in the last 2 months. I think if DSL parents and if Dublin United parents really knew what was going on and really being told the real truth, they would not be very happy with it. I have some information. I talk to people, they come up and talk to me and ask what's going on, and I tell them, and they're just like, really? They cannot believe some of the issues that have been going on, the bullying that's been happening, and it's very, very sad. This amendment furthers council's vision of being recreational, and that's something we've stressed from day one. And I think that we need to go ahead and pass this and get through it. Our town is being turned upside down by negativity and issues that are hurting people's lives. So I think we need to move on and get going with this.
With that said, I'm going to call for the vote, and with the understanding, unless there's any other comment by council members, with the notation that was the result of the exchange between Mr. Ehrman and Ms. Boring about soccer academy. There was some language in the agreement. I forget exactly where it was, but you remember the exchange.
Yes.
And then the other revision would have been Article 4, Section 4B. Is that correct? I think those were two changes to the agreement. Do you?
Yeah. There's the one in section B21 that was referenced in Mr. Ehrman's slide. That was just a mistake where we crossed out something that shouldn't have been crossed out.
Yes.
The language regarding the treasurer, you wanted to separate that out from the chair duties. And I believe how I understood it is eliminate the first part where the executive director may serve as treasurer, and then just pull section B out to make the treasurer its own section.
Correct?
Correct, 2 signatures, and the one issue that was still kind of out in the open was whether you wanted to set some type of threshold for a second signature. I believe that at least one of the speakers mentioned there's a lot of very low dollar checks, so that might be time consuming, but, you know.
What is council's pleasure with respect to the last item?
Well, personally, without, accurate information about,
Yeah.
Is low meaning under $100?
Well,
I can't answer that.
And maybe at
And
this
it's two
point,
signatures from within their organization, so why couldn't they get that?
well, and maybe council makes a recommendation to them, and they can bring something back to let you know what they've done at that point in time or what's feasible for them. I mean,
That's one that we can look at from a minute. You could direct us at the administrative level to review and determine an amount that would be appropriate based upon discussions with the board, and then we can make sure make council aware of what that dollar amount has been.
I would agree with that.
I would support that, and, there are auditing principles that you're well aware of, and, what best practices and good practices, prudent practices are, so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. So with those notations, if you will, so that council's clear regarding what we're voting on, Judy, would you call for the vote, please?
Vice Mayor Salee.
Yes?
Mayor Lacklider.
Yes.
Mr. Gerber.
Yes.
Mrs. Boring. Yes. Mr. Keenan.
Yes.
Mr. Reiner.
Yes.
Ms. Hennessy.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for everyone's patience and participation. Moving on to the second readings, ordinance 22-13.
Rezoning approximately 28.1 acres located on the west side of Highland Cry Road, approximately 1,030 feet north of the intersection with Brian Road and Mitchell DeWitt Road, from R Rural District to PUD Plan Unit District, Development District, Celtic Crossing PUD, to establish a 44-lot, single-family detached residential development and 8.75 acres of open space.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goodwin, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. We appear to be having some technical difficulties with the PowerPoints, but we may not need the slide. If you'd like me to pull it up, I'll have to get that working. This rezoning ordinance was introduced at the March 11th council meeting. The primary point of discussion at that meeting was the tree replacement requirements for this particular development. If you recall, the applicant had proposed within the rezoning development text to include some modified tree replacement requirements as opposed to the more typical tree waiver process that typically comes before council as a separate agenda item. Council expressed some concern with this particular approach and requested that that language be removed from the development text and that a separate waiver be brought back. The applicant has provided a revised development text that does remove that language. It now states that tree replacement is per code unless otherwise approved by council. With regard to any other items, there have been no other changes to the text or the proposed development plan. The applicant also has elected not to pursue a tree waiver at this time. Through discussion with staff, they are going to move through the final development plan review process with the Planning and Zoning Commission and look for additional opportunities to locate replacement trees on site and thank you. The proposed site plan is shown on the slide here. So no tree waiver request is included on the agenda this evening. Again, they'll work with staff and attempt to replace as many trees as possible on the site through the final development plan process. Happy to provide any additional overview of the rezoning request if you like, and the applicant is here as well.
Great, thank you very much. If council doesn't have any questions of Mr. Goodwin, we'll move right to Mr. Hale. Good evening.
Hi, Ben Hale Jr., thank you very much for allowing us to be here. That soccer thing, whoa, I was here the last time that came up.
You're a lucky man.
Hasn't changed. Same conversation 7 years later. Jeez. A lot of passion about soccer in Dublin, that's probably a good thing. We were here the last time, and Jack Reynolds did the presentation, and we did go to Planning Commission and work very closely on this development plan with the Parks District, and worked out the hike-bike path that goes through the park, and we really think that this is a very good plan. Gets people from the school into the park and gets people through there. So, and we will, if we need a tree waiver, we'll come and see you. We'll file the application. We know how to do that. But when we go through for final development plan, we'll see exactly what we have to do, and if we can't get them on, we may come and see you. But hopefully, we'll be able to resolve it and not need any tree waiver. They're not, except where the creek is and along the border. This is pretty much a cornfield. So we are trying to, particularly along that north property line, protect all those trees. And one of the reasons you see the bike path on this plan sort of setting out in that field is so we do protect those trees. And we have a little ditch that goes along the north side of that, so we pick up the sheet flow to keep it off of the residents. So that bike path, in terms of where it's located and how we're draining it and all that, has really been very well thought out. And that little creek, not creek, but that little drainage thing that goes along the north side of that will then empty right into the creek. So we think that we're very cognizant of those people along that tree line not having future water problems, because a lot of times what happens with people like that, they get sheet flow. And so we've cut the sheet flow off. That basic field naturally drains to the south. So we think we have really thought hard about our future residents, because it seems like every zoning you work on, somebody has a drainage problem, and largely it's caused by that off-site sheet flow, and the perimeter drainage on these lots aren't good enough. So we think we've really, along with your staff, we think we've really worked hard to make sure that we've tried to think of all the problems. We really think this will be a terrific subdivision, although that creek isn't the biggest creek in the world. It does have some nice vegetation, and when you go through that creek, we'll dress that bridge up some. It'll be a culvert, but we'll make it really feel good. And we think this will be a terrific addition to the city. All these lots are 90-footers, so we can all accommodate 3-car garages. And we think it'll be a terrific addition and be very successful across from the high school. Thank you.
Very good, Mr. Hale. Any questions of Mr. Hale?
Yeah, hey, Ben, I just have a quick question. I think you got an interesting variety of amenities here for all the future residents, and I think you did a good job preserving what green area we had. The question I have, again, is back to the homeowners association maintaining this and how that's set up.
Well, an awfully lot of this, frankly, that's out there doesn't need much maintenance. The creek we totally intend to leave in its natural state, and we think with this number of residents, they're not going to have an unusually large fee. You all will have title to the open space, so that they won't have to pay taxes. All they'll have to do is do some maintenance. But this is really seen as relatively low maintenance stuff. It's not lots of things that have to be maintained. In some cases, we've worked with parks to take over some of that maintenance. I don't think here that's going to be probably necessary.
Now, just, our worry is what our worry has been in the past, and that is that with this few number of houses, that in the end, the homeowners come to the city and say, will you take this over and take that over? And then here you have 3 water features with aerators, and I just want to make sure that the homeowners association is set up in such a way that this is self-contained, self-maintained, it doesn't become a burden for the taxpayers in the future.
It'll be a force and funded association, and we've thought hard about that, and it is mostly pretty low maintenance stuff. I mean, along that creek and in those areas, there's really no reason to go in there. Just you let it be natural.
Okay.
Great.
I have a question for Justin, if I could. Justin, and this is kind of light, but just to ask, I had a neighborhood that likes another neighborhood's mailboxes better, okay? And the neighborhood has the wooden mailboxes, like the little roofs, and looks like a house. But the mailboxes they were envying were the mailboxes at Riverside Woods. They're at Hard Road in Riverside, and they have really nice metal mailboxes that are on a little pole. Do you know what I mean by any chance, the differences? And I was just wondering if when we work with developers, do we mention mailboxes, or is it out of our perusal, which I can understand?
It's not necessarily out of our purview. That's something that typically would happen at the final development plan process. It does not always, it is a detail that does not always get specifically addressed, but it certainly is something that we can work with the developer on if there's a specific character that's desired.
And I'm not very good at explaining it, but, okay, for me, the look lasts longer with little maintenance, because these other mailboxes tend to require more maintenance sooner with staining and all, but just would...
We got a basketball game.
Oh, we do. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. Just look at mailboxes, if you will, because it really brings some class, and I'm sorry. I'm done. Thank you for reminding me, folks.
Okay, very good. Judy, if you call for the vote, please.
Mrs. Goring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Saleh? Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Tennessee Circle?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Mayor-elect Leiter?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Moving on to ordinance 25-13.
Rezoning approximately 3.02 acres located on the west side of Kaufman Road, approximately 300 feet north of the intersection with Ross Common Road from R1 Restricted Suburban Residential District to PUD, Planned Unit Development District, Kaufman Reserve PUD, to establish a 6-lot, single-family detached residential development and a 0.29 acres of open space.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. This ordinance was introduced at the last council meeting, and there were quite a few questions that council had and that information we wanted to bring back to you all, primarily about tree preservation, sidewalk connections, stormwater management, and how it related to the homeowners association maintenance requirements. So a quick map again on the west side of Kaufman Road, just north of Ross Common. The proposal is for a preliminary development plan and a preliminary plat for 6 lots of a new street off Kaufman Road. You may have noticed in your memo the street name has changed from Killarney Court, which was proposed at the last meeting, to Brennan Court, which is a street that is not yet a street in Dublin, so the name had to be changed. The plan is generally like you saw it at the first reading, and in the memo we were letting you know that the proposal includes, at this point, 3 trees to be removed, generally in the location of just to the north of this existing home, needed for the road to be going into the development. And those are large pine trees. They total 82 inches. There's just 3 trees, but each of them is a pretty sizable tree. I've also included in the memo, as well as on this map, a plan that shows the trees on the north side of the proposed road, which are intended to be preserved in a reserve. And this is also the area where the sidewalk stops right at the top of the cul-de-sac. And there are 21 trees along this northern property line, which, as you can kind of see here, they provide a natural buffer against the residents that are in Hemingway Village. And we've had several reasons for being comfortable with the sidewalk not extending on the north side of the road. Specifically, if you go back here, the sidewalk ends at Lot 6, wherever that driveway would be. And those are, one, that the sidewalk is not intended to be a loop. It's intended to just serve the lots to get out onto Kaufman Road so that they can get onto the larger sidewalk system. And then we wanted to make sure that there was the possibility to preserve those trees, to keep this buffer in place, as those residents here on Fitzgerald are used to having those trees near their backyards. And then, just lost my train of thought, excuse me. I'm going to move on. With the stormwater management, we've been working with engineering to provide the information that you'd asked for in the memo about the requirements for stormwater management, and the applicant, engineering as well as planning, felt most comfortable with the proposal as it stands today, and it did at the last meeting, with this dry detention basin between lots 4 and 5. Essentially, there is requirements for stormwater management that the city cannot waive their Ohio EPA requirements, and those could either be accommodated underground or in this type of a setup. And we all felt most comfortably with this setup because it would be low maintenance, there would be mowing costs that the homeowners association would have to take care of. And the applicant has estimated that to be about $350 a year for each of the lots, as well as that the facility would be out in the open and therefore not forgotten. And the underground system would also require maintenance that is expected to be more costly than this type of an arrangement. With that, I think I have addressed all the follow-ups that council had from the first reading, and the applicant is here as well, and Paul has also obviously helped, so if you have questions for him, he's here as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Council members have questions?
I do.
Please.
Claudia, just tell me about the tree replacement or removal on the south side, the backs of 1 through 5. I haven't heard too much from the neighborhood, except that they are very interested in the trees that are there continuing to be there.
Yes, the trees are intended to remain. There is going to be utilities along the rear, but they're moved north so that those trees have a really good chance and are shown to be retained on the plans.
Okay, so the customary tree fencing, and what is the, is it a no-build or?
It's a setback, it's 25 feet. And the trees are really close to the common property line.
Right, so 25 feet's plenty for the root zone and et cetera?
It should be, yes.
Okay. All right, and then I have one question for the applicant, that's it.
And Mr. Byrd, or who is here on behalf of the applicant this evening? Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Charles Ruma, 10104 Brewster Lane, Powell, Ohio, 43065. Good
evening, sir.
Good evening.
You have anything you want to say about the application?
We're in full agreement with the planning staff that we feel the plan is probably best served staying as the detention facility and foregoing the stormwater waiver.
Okay. You had a
Just
question?
curious, what your anticipated construction date, about when are these homes going to start being constructed, and what do you see as a build-out?
Well, if approved, we would have to go through the cycle of getting the development plans approved, and if all went very well, we would hope that we could get those, it's a short section of road that we would hope might have the possibility of being installed this year. If that is the case, I would expect the build-out to happen over the next 12 months. As far as seeing what we've seen in this community as far as home sales in the last 6 months, I'd be very positive to see this go very quickly, especially being in the Kaufman School District.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have a Nancy Byron that was signed up to speak. Don't know if Nancy Byron is still here. She had signed up to speak to this particular ordinance. It says here that Nancy's a resident of 7056 Fitzgerald. So maybe the soccer discussion wore her out, unfortunately.
Wore me out.
She left. Staff is indicating to me that she left. Okay, very good. If council doesn't have any other comment, Judy, if you call for the vote, please.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you all very much. Ordinance 26-13.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a real estate purchase agreement with Wendy's International Incorporated for the purchase of 2.37 acres, more or less, generally located to the southeast of Riverside Drive and West Dublin Granville Road intersection.
Thank you. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, as the clerk read, this real estate purchase agreement, if approved by council, would authorize the city manager to execute it for the purpose of purchasing the Wendy's International Inc. restaurant located at the corner of State Route 161 and Bridge Street and Riverside Drive. I think council is very familiar with this process. This is a result of the anticipated intersection improvements at Riverside Drive and State Route 161 Bridge Street. And as you're aware, we anticipate that when those improvements take place, it will significantly impact the ingress, egress of the site. We've been working very proactively with Wendy's for the better part of 2 years regarding this restaurant. As you know, they've been before you regarding their new restaurant that they propose to build immediately to the east behind the existing restaurant. The agreed upon purchase price is $2 million, which is right at the halfway point between their appraisal and our appraisal, and we feel it's a very fair and appropriate price. So with that, we recommend council approval of this ordinance.
Great. Questions or comments from council? Hearing none, Judy, if you'd ask for the vote, call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving on to the first reading of ordinances, ordinance 27-13.
Rezoning approximately 26.5 acres located on the north side of Rings Road, approximately 1,100 feet west of the intersection with Eiderman Road, from R Rural District and R1 Restricted Suburban Residential District to PUD, Plan Unit Development District, Links at Ballantrae, PUD, to establish a 45-lot, single-family detached residential development and 7.08 acres of open space.
Introduction, please.
I will introduce it.
Thank you. Ms. Husak, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. This ordinance is a request to establish a new planned unit development for 26.5 acres. The site is just south of Ballantrae on the north side of Rings Road. To the west, immediately adjacent to the site, is the Woodlands of Ballantrae condominium area. And then to the east is the Washington Elementary School, as well as the Northwest Chapel of the Brethren Church. Here is the proposed preliminary development plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this approximately a month ago and recommended approval to City Council. One of their conditions was to eliminate one lot, which the applicant has done with the plan before you. So the proposal is for 45 lots on this 26.5 acres for a density of approximately 1.7 units to the acre. The plan includes 11 reserves and open spaces. The city is going to be maintaining about 5 acres of those. There's a total of 7.08 acres preserved, proposed as open space. The plan also includes on the very southwest corner portion of the Rings Causeway connector, from which the development will have one of its main access points, Cadmore Drive. And then there's a secondary access point of Marmion Drive just to the north there. There are sidewalks or bike paths proposed along all of the public streets, as well as a connection to the west with the elementary school. We have a condition in there that the applicant work with the school to determine the appropriate location where the school wants this wants this path to occur. There's also a central park there. It's about a 1 acre that the applicant will work with us on programming for an open space for the neighborhood. And then there's also proposed a 25-foot tree preservation zone for lots with mature trees in the, along the rear, which is the lots to the north as well as the lots to the west. There have been some communications with the Patch family, who owns a house in the city of Dublin just north of Rings, immediately adjacent to the site. And the applicant has been working with engineering to move this road a little bit more to the east away from their home. And then we also have a condition proposed that would require the applicant to work with us and the family at the final development plan stage to provide additional buffering and landscaping for this parcel. The applicant has, here's the preliminary plat, by the way, it looks very similar to the development plan. The applicant has been working with us to address a lot of the conditions from the Planning and Zoning Commission. I highlighted them here in green and also mentioned them in the memo. Anything that had to do with the development text, the applicant addressed as part of the proposal in front of you. And anything that is reflected in black, we would work with the applicant through the final development plan stage to address those conditions. There's 116. There was discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission about garages. The applicant has committed in the development text to require 50% of the lots to have a side-loaded garage. Some of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners wanted to get the applicant to agree to require 3-car garages. And the applicant has included a letter in your council packet tonight stating some preference for having the option of 2-car garages available, and they're here obviously to speak to that. So that has not been addressed as one of the conditions from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we are recommending approval at the second reading at the next meeting of the preliminary development plan as well as the preliminary plat, which only has 1 condition. So I'm here, the applicant and his team is here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions of Claudia?
I just have one question.
Please.
On condition number 16, the requirement for a 3-car garage, are we requiring that of developers now?
The commission requested it, yes.
It's not market-driven?
I'm going to give the applicant the market question.
I mean, it's...
I'm with you, Rick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
that.
It's in our purview.
Yeah.
Mr. Hale.
First, I'd like to say that the way this subdivision has come about, Rick, you might have even been on the planning commission when you heard this back in 07. All the lots here can take 3-car garages. We have said that we will guarantee that at least half of them be 3-car garages because we think that the market demand will be that high. But what we would like to be able to do is give people, certain people, don't want a 3-car garage. I don't have a 3-car garage in my house. I didn't want, my wife said, you get a 3-car garage, it's going to cost us another $50,000. You'll go buy another car. So I didn't get a 3-car garage. So some people don't want 3-car garages, and we would like to have the option if they choose not to have one, to not have it. The only other things I'd like to add to Claudia, one of the things that we did here is we have really congregated this open space, and we've worked closely with your park staff, and these are all pretty big open spaces, and they have agreed to take those for maintenance. So the subdivision is not going to have this. We have more than twice as much open space as required under the code. So almost all this open space out in front, except for where the entry features are going to be maintained by the city. And this little 1-acre thing, after we program it, is going to be maintained by the city. So they're going to have to do the maintenance on the entry features, et cetera. But and we have not asked for a tree waiver. This thing is really a cornfield. So we would hope that you would approve this, and we're happy with what we have in our text, which is that 50% of these houses will have 3-car garages. But we would like to have the opportunity to give some choice to our buyers.
Curiosity, I'm assuming if I chose a two-car garage, I would have more interior living space, right?
You would either have that or a larger lawn.
But,
Yeah. But, I don't know that, at some price point, most people want, a lot of people want a three-car garage. I have a very nice home. As I said, I didn't get one.
Any other comments or questions of either staff or Mr. Hale?
This thing obviously has been in the pipeline for a while,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Were you here for the last meeting, Ben?
You might have been.
Were you?
Huh?
Were you here for our last meeting?
Yes.
What we're trying to do
No,
is,
I was not here.
okay, we're trying to direct, and since this is an old product, we're trying to direct staff to come up with a little more creativity on the layout of housing, more like in what you would be familiar with, because I'm sure you were party to it, more like the first phases up in Merrifield, where you actually had radiating lots instead of houses on a grid lined up with the backyards. And what happens to these homeowners is they're looking into 3 or 4 other properties, and it's really not a very attractive outcome for them, because it requires a huge amount of money for any kind of privacy, for them to obtain any kind of privacy. So what we're asking staff to do, and you're off the hook on this because this is an old one, but to try to come on, and you handle a lot of these cases, so we're expecting or hoping that in the future we get a little more clever use of layout for the lots with radiating lots, that they're not all lined up in a side by side, and so that they'll not have to spend so much money in landscaping and screening their side properties. So,
We're working with staff on a product. I know we all want to go watch basketball.
Thank you.
especially on this site, if
Yeah.
this was like 26 acres,
Yeah.
you could have really done some really creative layout on this site, and I don't want to sit here and,
Yeah, you know what happens to you, it's interesting. Everything's a trade-off in life, and you can do those things, but often what happens, we got way more open space here, more than 2 times what's required by the code. And when you do those things, one of the things that happens to you, something's always have to give, and these larger open spaces go away. And because of this road that comes in here, this future road, we had to not only think about the setback from Rings Road, but we also had to think about the setback from that road, because that's going to be a pretty important road someday. And here we had looked at some of that stuff, and we decided that, when I say we, I mean we and the staff, decided that the better thing to do here was to congregate this open space and make it larger, and to have this, when you come in on this little road, have it hit this open space in the middle, which will be, we're going to program that very nicely, and that will be an absolutely terrific entry into the subdivision. So, I hear what you're saying, but sometimes when you look at it, especially I think with this site in particular, you look at it and you say the right thing to do here is to congregate that open space, because we're dealing with, we need such a big setback out front in order to make this thing work. So, I would hate for that to be a monolithical, requirement, because I think if you do, like in this case, you'll miss some opportunities, and I think we did the right thing here.
No, John and I were talking about that last time, Ben, and it's I guess the best way to put it is we want to encourage some creativity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I was here the night. I'm probably the only person here who was here the night that Muirfield got approved.
Yeah. And you got,
it was in a little room that had no bathroom, but
and you got to say that planners today all say that the first couple phases of Muirfield is some of the best planning that was ever done on lots, because everybody has a radiating view out into a common area or some such thing.
Or a golf course.
Yeah, or something, grass or trees or something. And it's really nice for the homeowners instead of lining them up. And it would be great to continue that quality of design throughout the rest of the towns when we finish it out, instead of, a grid. the boxes. Thank you.
Curiously enough, John, I'm looking at some old papers, and you were very much in favor of that conservation design where you group all the houses together so you would have green space, but we won't go there.
Well, let me correct you,
No, I don't
Catherine.
want-
No.
Ben, I do like the idea that you
No,
go-
Catherine, wait a minute. Conservation design, just to clarify that for you, has radiating houses looking out at common space.
Okay.
So, no, I don't think you understood the
Guys,
concept.
if I could,
Okay.
this is an interesting discussion, but we
Thank
have
you.
some people that have been patiently waiting to speak.
I
Kathy?
do like the idea that when you go in and you hit that green space, because no house gets headlights as people are coming in.
That's right.
Great. But Claudia, I wondered why this road was even curved the way it was. If there's a house right there, why it didn't come down straighter to the far corner anyway?
Stormwater?
Paul?
Radius.
Radius, stormwater?
Radius.
Yeah, it's really to provide a tangent section north of Rings Road so we can get an appropriate intersection there. And then in the future, as improvements take place, one of the things that'll happen is that there will be a roundabout eventually planned in this area. So we'll actually work to move this point of intersection over to the east. And then eventually a road to the south, which will go down and tie into a future Tuttle crossing.
Because, you know, if I turn in right and then I got that curve, I think I would agree that we need to move that over for the benefit of that one house if possible.
So you've got an easement there to put that future roundabout in?
Well, we own all this property.
Okay, that's what I heard. I thought I heard that.
And actually, we've worked as much as we can. That's why you see a little bit of a kink in this roadway already. Try and get it as far away from this rear corner. It's about 40, a little over 40 feet from the right-of-way to this rear corner of the Patch property.
I am concerned about the Batch family. Claudia, I'm not sure.
Excuse me, they're here to speak this evening.
Oh, good. Well, I just want to support that they need, they need as much landscaping or whatever buffer can be done by at the developer's cost.
Right.
And we've agreed to do that at final development plan and come up with a specific plan. We have a good relationship with the Patches, and we've been trying to accommodate them every way we can.
Great.
Claudia.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask Mr. Patch to come up and speak, but
Okay.
you have another question.
For Claudia. Claudia, way back when, we used to, when people were building in Union County, require that the developers put information on their sales brochures to notify people that. I'm sure you'll be putting on your sales brochure that this is Hilliard School District. And the other thing, you might point out to people that there is railroad tracks over there. We've been through some of that problem, too. So it'd be nice if you let people know that there are railroad tracks over there. And by the way, nice mailboxes.
And it is
Thank you.
for the
Mr.
airport.
Patch.
Did you see the mailboxes?
Thank you, sir. Good
I'll be
evening.
quite brief. I'm David Patch, and I'm representing my mother as well. She lives at 6800 Rings Road, which is the southwest corner. Originally, the road was like literally right next to the fence row, and it's pretty flat there. So when you're coming into a $400,000 subdivision, it just seems to me that the road should be moved further east. And the staff has been great to work with me as well as the applicant to try to get that to happen. Today is the first day I've seen where the roundabout might go, and that's sort of where I've been suggesting that the road should go. So I realized that, you know, the road would be moved to the further east. And then the other question, I guess, was Kathy mentioned the landscaping, because I haven't seen anything on the drawings, you know, sort of indicating that there'd be any kind of trees. I don't know what the trees should be. But at some point, that's going to be a very busy intersection. I think it probably will hook up to Tuttle Road at some point, so that you've got all that traffic from Tuttle. Granted, there may be other arterial roads going through there, but that Rings corridor and Cosgrave corridor, I guess, is going to be pretty busy. So you've got people going around the turn circle there, or the roundabout. It would be nice to either have some mounding or some kind of landscaping at some point. And then the other thing, I guess, probably is not related to this, but right there, my mother's house in that southwest corner is the Amlin sign. And so that's probably not part of this, but if they are going to be doing some landscaping, that I've always thought, because I've lived in Amlin, my grandfather had the post office and then grocery store there for 65 years, that Amlin was supposed to be sort of a rural village. And so it would be nice to see that maybe that Amlin sign still stay there, and that there be some kind of entry feature, again, that may be not part of this applicant's issue, but that maybe Dublin would consider that when they're redoing all of this area, because right now it doesn't look too pretty, other than the Amlin sign. And then the last question was, and I'll work with the applicant too, but where would my mother be able to get water and sewer? So I don't know that that's part of this discussion, but rather than tearing up a road that's already built and all the green space, is there a way to bring that access up to my mother's property or somewhere in there so that we're not crossing the road? Because she's been in Dublin for, I think, 20-some years, and we still don't have access to water and sewer. So appreciate your help.
Well, that's one of the things we can look at as to where the water and sewer lines are coming in, and if, they're in the city, they would have access to the lines that go in. So we can take a look at that and see where the lines are actually going and what the impact is.
So Claudia, whoever is following this, if you would make a note of that and work with the patches regarding that particular issue, would appreciate it. Mr. Patch, just so that you and your mother understand, this was the first reading tonight, and we will have the second reading on April 22nd. Okay? Everybody good? I'm sorry, yes.
It was condition 16. Were we going to modify that?
Make a motion?
I think, it was the 50%. They were agreeable to 50% of the...
I just wanted to clarify, the development text requires 50% side-loaded garages.
Yeah, I just read that.
Yeah.
Right.
But I heard him say 50%, they would commit to 50% of...
If they're side-loaded, they're 3 cars.
3 cars, yeah.
Except for mine.
Well, I don't know that we want to require all side-loaded garages. I mean, I may purchase a lot there and want a side-loaded garage with just two spaces, correct? I don't want
The current requirement is we have 50% side-loaded garages.
Yeah. Not necessarily that they have to be
Side-loaded.
3-car.
They don't have to be...
They don't have to be 3s, they are side-loaded.
That's not what 16 says. 16 says...
No, that's what Planning Commission wanted.
Okay, so how do we fix 16 so that you're not required...
eliminate it.
We
You can eliminate it. Let's eliminate that condition.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. You want a motion? Also move.
Second.
There you have it.
Okay. That just, I don't know that we need to vote on that tonight, but we just eliminate that condition.
Bring it
Well, that's
back
right. That
without
comes
it.
up next
And
time.
it comes
Yeah.
back April 22nd.
Yeah,
Good.
Okay? All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you all.
thank you.
Moving on to the resolution portion of our agenda, Resolution 18-13.
Appointing members to the various boards and commissions of the City of Dublin.
Thank you, Judy.
I'll introduce it.
Oh.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Tim. March 6th, which feels like a very long time ago, council met in executive session to interview candidates for our boards and commissions and also consider the membership of our newly reconstituted CSAC commission. We have a number of appointments. There are 2 separate resolutions, and I guess we need 2 separate votes, or we can?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So 18.3 is a resolution appointing members to various boards and commissions, City of Dublin, Ohio. Section 1, Patrick Todoran will be reappointed to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Ryan Myers is appointed to a 3-year term, the Board of Zoning Appeals. David Rinaldi will be appointed to a 3-year term on the Architectural Review Board. Philip Smith will be appointed to a 3-year term as city representative to the Dublin Convention and Visitors Bureau. We will have additional recruiting going on for the Architectural Review Board because we have several vacancies due to the resignation of some members, and so we'll go forward with that at a future time.
Okay. So we're asking for a vote then on Resolution 18-13. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Judy, if you call for the vote, please.
Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Saleh?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring? Yes. Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Tennessee Circle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Resolution 19-13 is a resolution appointing members to the reconfigured Community Service Advisory Commission of the City of Dublin. We are nominating Steve Stedham and Bill Sherman to 1-year terms, and we are staggering these terms so that folks are rolling off and coming back on. It happened that the existing terms of the individuals coincided very well with our needs, so it worked out well. Steve Stedham and Bill Sherman are 1-year terms. Mindy Carr and Todd Keener are appointed to 2-year terms. Mel Ehrlich and Derek Graham are appointed to 3-year terms on the Community Service Advisory Commission. Asking for a vote tonight.
Judy, if you call for the vote, please.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring? Yes. Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
No.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Other? No other, no staff comments? Moving on to roundtable, let's begin with the Finance Chair report.
Yes, we had a Finance Committee of the whole meeting prior to City Council starting. I'd like to recommend that the council approved a $16,000 bid tax grant to the Dublin Arts Council.
And I'll second that.
Judy, if you call for the vote, please.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Lucklider?
Yes.
Mrs. Boring? Yes. Vice Mayor Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Gerber?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
The minutes, could you please put in what is the purpose is for a community survey?
Right, it's for a community research project. Just a report out from the Finance Committee meeting. We've had a report from the first quarter, and we are on solid financial ground at this particular time, and we hope to continue that as we move forward this fiscal year. Also, we had a lengthy discussion regarding and recommendations that we can consider for the President's Cup, and if you have additional comments you'd like to make to Sandra, please do so quickly, but essentially, people were in essence in agreement with the majority of what was being considered, with the exception of the golf balls and the legacy project. Thank you.
Great. Mayor Lee, would you like to continue with any roundtable comments you might have?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. John?
None, Mayor, thank you.
Kathy?
Wondered if someone might be able to update Colleen Marshall about Dublin being one of the top 7 in the ICF for 2 years. She had a report about Columbus being the top 20. Yes, but if you saw the report, it was as if no other community in Ohio was intelligent. So, any case, it was just an interesting report, and I think it might be nice for her to be updated on some previous happenings. Fred, Scioto Park is getting a full-service facilities?
Yes, plans are in review services right now. As soon as we get a building permits, we'll go out to bid on that.
There you go.
How are we getting the water there? The question is, the reason I'm asking a question is, will this factor into any considerations of extending water up Riverside Drive?
No, it exists right across the street on Riverside Drive right now.
Gotcha, thank you. Dave, the Holder Wright property,
Yes.
congratulations, that's exciting. The Ohio Historical Society is going to catalog artifacts. In the long run, who will be able to display those or own those? Will we be able to have them if we create something like a museum or something there?
We do not have a written agreement with them right now, but the answer is going to be that the city of Dublin will always reserve, at a minimum, reserve the right to have these artifacts on City of Dublin display. Right now, the only what's being negotiated right now is technically the ownership of it, and we do not have a signed agreement with
Okay, thank you, but you are looking at that.
Absolutely. Again, it's been we've made it very clear that we may well have a long-term need of displaying any and all artifacts as collects from the site.
Thank you. The last thing, not for you,
Oh.
thank you, is that we have one of our young entrepreneurs that happens to be named as a 40 under 40 recognition, and this individual happens to be a son of one of our council members. So congratulations to Brian Zerker for being named one of the 40 under 40s this year. It's a great honor.
Oh, thank you on his behalf.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, I had a pig.
thanks. Mike?
Yeah, I wanted to just say something very quickly about this soccer piece. There's a lot of people that have watched this, will watch it, and they're going to be very confused, as many of us were. But I want to be clear that this whole thing was about, a lot of it had to do with money, had to do with cost of programming. It had to do with the cost of anywhere from $200 for a family to send a youngster to a soccer program to $500 to $1,000 or more. I don't think the general population realizes how much money is involved in this programming. The coaches are paid, the administrators, that whole thing. So I just wanted to raise that up. The passions are high. When you see that kind of thing going on, it's generally about money. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
Mike.
point.
Rick? Great, thanks. Amy?
We were distributed the preliminary council retreat agenda. I don't know if anybody has any additions or corrections. We will plan to meet at the venue at Corazon Friday, April 26th, beginning at 8 a.m. If anybody has any input for me or for Sarah, please let us know. We're meeting, Sarah and I believe, on April 10th to talk with Julia Novak about the agenda. So if you guys could get back in the next couple days, if you have other items you want to add or changes that you'd like to make, let's leave it at that.
Great, thanks, Amy. Well, I'll try to be as brief as possible. As you know, I was in Dublin, Ireland, at the invitation of the Lord Mayor and their City Council for St. Patrick's Day and 3 days. We can talk off the record about the visit and what a fantastic time it was. Just to comment regarding their city council, it consists of 52 members. Count your blessings. They are a city manager form of government, but they were great, very grateful, for our community being represented. We were there with representatives of Dublin, California, Dublin, Georgia, a small little village in New Hampshire, Dublin, and a borough or township from Pennsylvania. Dublin, California is roughly about the size of Dublin, Ohio. Dublin, Georgia, I think, is about 16,000 people. Dublin, Georgia also brought its city manager, Marcia, and their economic development director. But in any case, the folks in Dublin, Ireland were very, very grateful, for our representation there, and could not have been more hospitable. With that said, they presented me with a signed and numbered portrait. This is 100 of 150. This is Dublin City Council. And I know some of you have been there before, so maybe you've seen this. And then also a book. And again, if you've been there, I think you'll recognize some of the photographs. But hopefully we can find a place to display this, so folks can see it, the public, and the book, take a look at the book. So anyway, thanks very much for everybody's patience this evening. We're adjourned.